Story time about how I got my sister's boyfriend to fall in love with me and I do not regret it. Disclaimers not my story time, send me on Instagram. My sister and I have always been rivals since we were kids. I'm 22 and she's 24. We were always super close in age, which means we competed for everything, including our parents' attention, clothes and makeup, and somehow we always ended up liking the same boys. When I turned 16, she was going away for college and I actually started to appreciate her a lot more. We started calling each other every single day and I realized that I really missed my sister. We actually got closer living further away than together. My parents were also really happy with this because her and I would not get along when she lived at home. One weekend I decided to go stay with her on her campus and that's when things got interesting. My sister was living it up. She was partying all the time. I told her that I didn't really like that she was partying so much. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable with her passing out at random guys' places. She told me that I was overreacting and not to tell my parents. But I got home and told my parents everything. This is when our relationship became bad once again. After this, my sister didn't trust me and basically she became my enemy. She started criticizing everything about me, the clothes that I'd wear, so I had to distance myself from her. My parents wanted her to move back in with us because she wasn't doing well in school. She was clearly partying instead of studying. Of course, my sister refused to move back home, so my parents basically cut her off. I got a new boyfriend at this time and my sister would flirt with him anytime she came home. I even caught them hugging one time. Part 2 is a story time about how I stole my sister's boyfriend and don't regret it. Disclaimers not my story time, send me on Instagram. When I walked in on my boyfriend and my sister hugging, I knew I had to do something. I went straight to my parents and told them what she was doing. My dad pulled her into her room and talked to her, but she totally denied everything. She said that she was not flirting with my boyfriend, but we all knew that was a lie. Even my boyfriend was honest with me and told me that she had been flirting with him openly. That's when my boyfriend told me he didn't even want to come over to our house because my sister made him that uncomfortable. And when I told my parents this, they felt so embarrassed. They called my boyfriend and personally apologized to him. He was actually so sweet though. He would come visit me to my house and we would just chill out in his car while my sister was inside watching us through the window. Yeah, she was crazy. He and I eventually broke up because he went off to live in another country. And guess what? My sister said that she knew he never loved me and that's why he left me. She was being so mean at the time. A few years later, she started dating someone. Of course, at the time, it never occurred to me to even flirt with him or act the way that she did with my boyfriend. You see, I'm above all that. But as soon as I got a new boyfriend, she would start flirting with him. And she had no shame about it. This became a running problem in my family. My parents would ask her to leave me alone and my boyfriends, and she would say that she did. But no, she didn't. Oh yeah, and her boyfriend broke up with her because he noticed that she would flirt with a lot of guys. Apparently, she did it even in front of him. So when she finally got a new boyfriend, I decided that I was gonna do the same thing to her. I started flirting with her boyfriend a little. Not a lot, but I definitely made sure to tell him I thought he was attractive. After a few weeks, he started saying things back to me, and I knew that it was working. I never did it in front of my sisters and my parents because I didn't want them to get mad at me. So instead, I got her boyfriend to basically fall in love with me. I already knew everything about him because my sister would tell me, so I just started telling him I liked the same things he did. It got to the point where one day he kissed me and I didn't tell my parents. I made sure to get his hopes up. Part 3 is up. Once I got my sister's boyfriend to fall in love with me, her life turned to misery. No, I didn't regret it. Disclaimers is not my story time, send me on Instagram. One day I went up to my sister and told her that her boyfriend had kissed me. First she thought I was making it up to make her jealous. She told me I could never compete with her and that she was the more beautiful sister out of the two of us. Which is wrong. So I handed her my phone so that she could see all the messages that her boyfriend and I had been sending each other. And that's when she lost it. She started wailing on me. She started slapping and kicking me. My parents ran into her room and asked her what was wrong. I told my parents that I treated my sister the way she treated me. She would always go after my boyfriends, flirt with them, and try to get them to break up with me. Of course, my parents didn't agree with me, so they were really angry. They separated us, but my sister went crazy. She called her boyfriend and told him to come over. Obviously, he didn't know that she already knew at the time. And when he came over, she started beating him up. She grabbed a pan from the kitchen and started swinging at him. She actually ended up giving him a concussion. After that, she begged for his forgiveness, but he still broke up with her. At the end of the day, he ended up leaving her. She was so stupid for begging him to stay with her. Her boyfriend even asked me if we could be together, and I told him no. I told him that the whole time I had just been playing him just to get back at my sister, which I know is so cruel, but he deserved it. After that, my sister and I decided to make peace. She told me that she wouldn't mess with my boyfriends anymore and that she would stop being evil. But after a month of having my new boyfriend, I found her flirting with him too. I told her if she didn't stop that I would make her life miserable once again. I'm pretty sure she has a boyfriend, but she doesn't want to tell my family, because she knows that I'll go after him and I would probably end up making him fall in love with me too. But at this point, I just don't know what to do. What should I do? She's so evil and I want to make her life miserable. Bye.
Storytime about how I found out my husband was seeing escorts while I was pregnant. Disclaimers is not my story time was sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. We had tried and tried for a baby, and we had a really hard time. The first 3 years of our marriage was hell. We tried so much to get pregnant, but we just couldn't do it. We went to the doctor, and that's when they told us that my husband had a little problem. So basically, he was the reason why we weren't able to get pregnant easily. Because of this, I had to undergo a lot of treatments. I started taking all this different medication, which really messed with my hormones. For the first time in my life, I got acne. I started to gain weight, and I also started getting mood swings. Unfortunately, my husband for some reason thought this was a character flaw of mine, and that basically I should just be able to control my emotions. I took him to the doctor so that the doctor could explain to him what was happening to my body. Finally, the doctor told him that everything that was happening to me was because of the medicine that I was taking for us to have kids. My husband decided to apologize to me and wanted to take me on a trip. He took me to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and it was beautiful. We ended up making up, and it was the best time ever. A month later, we found out that I was pregnant. My husband was the happiest I'd ever seen him. 2 weeks later, I started noticing weird things in our bank account. We started sending $5,000 to one person in particular every single story time about how I found out my husband was seeing escorts while I was pregnant. Disclaimers, not my story time was sending me on Instagram. That's when I noticed that every single month he would send somebody $5,000. It had been happening for 3 months. Right away, I was suspicious. A few months back, he and I had watched a documentary about escorts. And during the documentary, he kept judging all the women and the men. You know, acting greater than thou. And as soon as I saw the payments on our bank account, it's like a light bulb went off in my head. He must have seen that documentary and been like, wow, I know I can do that. Of course he can. My husband is a 40-year-old, good-looking, wealthy man. So that's when I started investigating. I had full access to his laptop, which had all of his text messages, as well as emails, and he never bothered to change his password on any of it. I waited for him to leave to the gym, and that's when I got on his laptop. I uncovered a whole ring of escorts. Not only was he sending money to one girl through our bank account, he was paying other girls through Bitcoin. As I was crying in front of the laptop, I had the presence of mind to start adding up all the money he had spent. In only 3 months, my husband managed to spend $55,000, and from what I could gather, he had about 5 escorts. Keep in mind, he's doing all of this while I'm pregnant. So here's what I did. I managed to contact each girl and ask for the money back. And I basically threatened to expose them. One was a teacher, the other was a model, which I could contact her agency and accuse her. One was actually a stay-at-home mom who was married. Only one responded to my messages. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I found out my husband was seeing escorts while I was pregnant. Disclaimers that not my storytime was sending me on Instagram. Finally, one of the escorts got back to me, and she told me that she would give me all of the money back. My husband had given this girl $7,000 in the time span of 2 weeks. Then she spilled all the tea. She told me my husband had signed up to an escort website, and that he had anywhere between 10 and 15 girls. So there were other ways he was paying them, and I just didn't know about it. This is when I came to my senses. I told her she did not need to send the money back to him because it wasn't her fault. It was my husband's fault. Then this girl told me that my husband would talk bad about me to her, and that they would meet up at fancy hotels, and that's when he would tell her that I was a toxic wife, and that all I cared about was money. By the way, I make my own money. I told her I was pregnant, and she was mortified. I gathered up all the evidence, and I confronted my husband. That's when he said, finally, I don't have to hide it anymore. He told me that he didn't really think I would care. Since when? I asked him to tell me the truth and tell me how many girls he was seeing and how much money he had spent. And he confessed that he had seen over 20 girls and probably spent over $100,000. Then he asked me for a divorce. I'm kind of glad he did because I was going to divorce him anyway. I am going to get his money and raise our child on our own. His family is trying to convince me otherwise though. What should I do?
Storytime about how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram account, not knowing it was really me. Disclaimer is not my storytime, was sending me on Instagram. The funny thing is that when my boyfriend and I got together, I did not want the relationship. He begged me for 6 months to be his girlfriend. And you see, the only reason why I didn't want to was because I knew that he was a player. Every single one of my friends had basically gone out with him. I was just the last girl in the group to go out with him because I always kept saying no. And looking back, he was definitely obsessed with me because I never gave in to him. I was the girl that he couldn't have. During those 6 months, he would hit me up on Instagram every single day. Anytime I posted a story, he would automatically reply to it. He would like and comment on all of my pictures. We also had a lot of mutual friends, so we would end up at the same events and parties. And every time that he would see me in public, he would zero in on me. He would basically ignore all the other girls at the party and make me feel like I was the only one there. And he would constantly compliment me and tell me how beautiful I was, how attracted to me he was, how I was just so different from all the other girls that he had gone out with. Trust me, I knew that he was love bombing me, but eventually Literally after 6 months, I was like, he's gotta be honest. So I decided to give him a chance. And let me tell you, he has been the perfect boyfriend. He's so sweet and considerate. My parents absolutely adore him. And my mom never likes anybody. See, I come from a Latino family. One day I decided to make a second Instagram account. It was just an inspiration account. I posted cute outfits of other people I liked, makeup, nails. Still one day I see my boyfriend in my DMs. Part two of how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram and not knowing it was actually me. Disclaimers that on my story time was sending me on Instagram. That's when I opened up my account to see that my boyfriend had DM'd me. First I thought he was joking. When I clicked into the message and I read it, my heart and my stomach sank. He was taking a shot. He thought that I was some sort of influencer. Now when I created the second account, I was already with him. I really didn't tell him that I was creating it. It was just for fun for myself. I did start gaining followers. I did put in a lot of work into this account, but it was pretty much a visual diary just for me. It just so happens that other girls liked the aesthetic and I started gaining a lot of followers. I had about 10,000. But here's my theory. Since my account is probably listed to be in the area that he is, probably popped up on one of his mutual lists or his explore page or something like that, because I was trying to figure out how he found the account. The message read, "Hey beautiful, I really love your pictures and love your style. I'm also really into fashion. Lol, no he's not. And I would love to take you out on a date. I know all the good spots around the city. Let me know if you're down." So when I clicked on my boyfriend's profile and realized that he had hidden all of the pictures we had together. So if he had DM'd any girl and she went to look at his profile, she would automatically assume that he's single because he doesn't have a picture of another girl. Instead of freaking out and calling him, I decided to keep cool. Instead, I called my mom. She told me to play along with the conversation. So that's what I did. Messaged him back and said, "Wow, I really love your pictures and your style too. What's your favorite designer?" He replied, "Louis Vuitton." Ew. By the end of the conversation, we had a date for that night. And I showed up. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram account, not knowing it was me. Disclaimer is now my story time is sending me on Instagram. At the end of the conversation he thought he was having with some other girl, we had decided to go on a date. And like I said, I was playing along, so I was super nice to him. I complimented all the clothes that he wore. I told him that he looked so attractive in his pictures and that I was really looking forward to meeting him. He chose a restaurant downtown. And of course he did, because I live nowhere near that area. In fact, he and I never go out on dates there. So he knew that he wouldn't see anybody he knew. Here's where it gets actually really funny. This man sent a picture of the outfit he wanted to wear. A brown fedora with the Louis Vuitton monogram on it, a Louis Vuitton belt, black pants, and a black shirt. So I replied saying, "That's perfect. I'll wear a black dress and my favorite Louis Vuitton purse." But I was still heartbroken. Here's what I did. I asked my mom to come with me to the restaurant. Her and I did our makeup, our hair, and we got dressed up really, really nice. And I decided to wear a black dress. My mom actually happened to have an old Louis Vuitton purse in her closet that she never wore, so I grabbed it. My mom and I show up to the restaurant and my boyfriend is already there. So I decided to walk in and turn around, so that way he could only see my back. My mom decided to stay outside of the restaurant, but she knew to come in as soon as he saw me. I suddenly feel a tap on my shoulder and that's when I turn around. He says, "Oh, hey babe, what are you doing here?" The look on this man's face was of pure fear. That's when I hand him my phone so that he could see that the account that he was messaging was actually mine. That's when he says, "You lied to me?" He was mad at me for pretending to be somebody else. Then he started apologizing. And then he said that he knew the whole time and that he was just joking around. I broke up with him and haven't spoken to him since. Story time about how I dated my 30-year-old teacher when I was only 15. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. When I was 14, my dad got a new job and we moved to a different state. This was terrible for me because I left all of my friends, my family, and my entire life. And I knew that going to a new school at 14 years old was going to be really hard. Basically starting from scratch. I really resented my dad for it, although looking back on it, I was being a total brat. My dad's job was paying him $200,000 a year, and obviously I didn't recognize this as a good thing. My mom and dad were incredibly happy about this. We got a really big house with a pool, a tennis court, a gym, and my parents were the happiest I'd ever seen them. But this upset me even more. So me being a bratty teenager, I decided to make their lives impossible. I started staying out late even though I didn't have friends. And when I started making friends at this new school, I befriended the wrong ones. I even started drinking. My drama class was the only one that I ever looked forward to and really had fun in. And this is where I met the guy that would become my boyfriend. The thing was, he was actually really attractive. He felt like another student in the class, and he made sure to be friends with every single student. Because I was new, he made an effort to get to really know me. Of course, looking back, I realized that this was GROOMING. No, I don't want to say the word. And then he would flirt with me and I would flirt back. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I dated my 30-year-old teacher when I was 15. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Sending me on Instagram. Sometimes he would flirt with me and then I would flirt back. But trust me, I never thought anything would actually happen. And like I said, he was becoming my best friend. He would give me all this advice and try to help me out. But then right after, he would say something flirty. One day he saw me having lunch by myself and asked me if I wanted to have lunch with him in his classroom. Of course I said yes. I mean, I did have a crush on this guy. As we're sitting in his classroom, we're just talking like friends. And that's when he starts asking me about boys. I told him I didn't like anyone and this clearly made him happy. That's when he came to sit right next to me and told me that he had a confession to make. That he actually had a crush on me. And I got so happy. I mean, obviously, I was a girl in high school who liked a guy and he liked her back. It was like the best news in the world. Then he told me that he wished he could kiss me, but he knew he couldn't in class. Then he said, why don't you come over to my house later? And I was like, okay, sure. Please don't ever do what I did. He picked me up a block away from school and we went to his house. And as you can imagine, things went down. Literally. I fell in love with this man that very same day. For the next 2 weeks, I went to his house every day. Then he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. This is when things started to get really scary. He became really jealous and controlling. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I dated my 30-year-old teacher when I was only 15. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. Once he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes, he totally changed. He became controlling and really jealous. Anytime he saw me talking to any boy in school, he would actually send the guy to detention. Eventually, I told him that I didn't want to be his girlfriend anymore because of how controlling he was. That's when he told me that I needed to learn how to be an adult, and that all adult relationships were like that. That women had to follow the men's rules, and that if I wanted to be in a relationship with him, that's what I had to do. I was so naive that I actually believed him. So after that, I would try to avoid anything that would make him upset. Basically, talking to any boys. Remember I said I had a group of friends? He told me I couldn't hang out with them anymore. He also wouldn't let me go to parties, and anytime we were alone, he would always try to kiss me even if I didn't want him to. In total, we were probably officially boyfriend and girlfriend for only 3 weeks. I was getting so tired of it. Told him I didn't want to be with him, and that I was not going to be in his class anymore. He tried to grab my arm, but before he could, I ran away from his class. And after that, he started begging me to get back with him. So here's what I did. I got another boyfriend a few weeks later, and he basically left me alone after that. To this day, I've never told anyone this story. Part of me feels guilty that I never said anything, but I'm pretty sure he didn't do it to anyone else. After I broke up with him, he moved to a small island and worked at a hotel. I'm now 25 and married. Not even my husband knows. Should I tell him?